There will be spoilers throughout this video for Ex Machina, DEVS, and Annihilation. Both the series DEVS and the film Ex Machina directly confront new groundbreaking technology. Yet instead of explaining to us what these technologies are up front, we are first introduced to them through feeling, through an experience. Both of these introductions, one to an artificial intelligence that may be on the cusp of consciousness in Ex Machina, and the other to a computer program that completely changes our understanding of our own consciousness in DEVS, evoke an encounter with the spiritual, with the divine, that we have come into contact with something truly beyond comprehension. What do we feel when we encounter something beyond our understanding? Something wholly unlike us, unlike ourselves? Do we feel awe, wonder, reverence, fear, hatred? And what if we ourselves were the ones to create this thing beyond our comprehension? What does that make us? Are we parents, creators, gods, or simply irrelevant? Do we control our destiny, or is our destiny controlled by what came before and what comes after us? These are the questions asked in the works of one of my favorite filmmakers of all time, Alex Garland. His three prominent filmmaking works, Ex Machina, Annihilation, and the recent miniseries DEVS, all ask these questions, presenting ideas of science, artificial intelligence, quantum mechanics, in conjunction with themes of religion, belief, free will, and truly asks us the question, are we in control of our actions? In the final episode of DEVS, we learn that the project is not actually called DEVS.
The name of the project, it's not DEVS. The V is Roman. So, actually a U.
Deus.
Putting the show in direct conversation with Garland's other film, Ex Machina. Deus Ex Machina. God from the machine. But both works ask us, who is the God and who is the machine? Are we the gods? Or are we simply programs carrying out a predetermined function? In all honesty, sitting down to write this discussion of Garland's work was one of the most anxiety-inducing projects I've ever done. Not just because its subject matter is anxiety-inducing, but because Garland's work is so dense that it's difficult to figure out where to begin. So for this video, I just want to present to you, however flawed, a glimpse into Garland's works DEVS and Ex Machina, and convince you why you need to encounter an experience with his work, even if it may fall beyond your, my, and even Garland's ability to fully understand. In DEVS, we encounter a machine that, from any data fed into it, a dead mouse for instance, it is able to extrapolate anything that will happen or has happened in the universe. In other words, it can show us the past and predict the future. This concept follows on the philosophy of determinism, that all events are caused by past events, such that nothing other than what does occur could have occurred. This is event causation, that things only happen because of the result of a previous event. Under determinism and event causation, even what we perceive as our actions are really just complex reactions of multiple causes and effects.
Why did the pen roll across the table?
You pushed it.
Why did I push it?
I'm guessing to make a point.
That's a reason. It's why the pen rolled across the table. You blinked.
What?
Why did you just blink? Your eyes were dry. Or you were nervous? Does anything ever happen without a reason?
In Ex Machina, Oscar Isaac's character, the CEO of a huge technology firm, presents us with a Jackson Pollock painting.
Jackson Pollock, that's right, the drip painter. Okay, he let his mind go blank and his hand go where it wanted. Not deliberate, not random, someplace in between.
Pollock just let his hand drip the paint where it fell. But in determinism, it wasn't actually random. Pollock could only have ever let the paint fall that way. He had no choice. It was always predetermined.
The life we lead, with all its apparent chaos, is actually a life on tram lines. Prescribed, undeviating, deterministic. I know it doesn't feel that way, Sergei. We fall into an illusion of free will because the tram lines are invisible. And we feel so certain about our subjective state.
According to the principle of alternating possibilities, an action is free only if an agent could have done otherwise. And if we are all deterministic, if every choice is caused by past events and everything after us is caused by our actions moving forward, then we don't have any free will. And under determinism, we could never have done anything else other than what we did. I couldn't have done anything else but make this video right now because of all the things that happened before this. This was always going to happen based on the causes and effects set in motion at the Big Bang. And Ex Machina continues this philosophical discussion by externalizing it with the idea of artificial intelligence. Caleb, a young programmer, is asked by the CEO of his company, Nathan, to give his newly created artificial intelligence, Ava, a Turing test. A test to determine if Caleb can ascertain if Ava is artificial or not. Basically, if she's conscious or not. Yet, how is consciousness defined? Clearly, Ava is programmed, working out complex algorithms and ideas put into her by her creator, Nathan. Yet, by the end of the film, Ava betrays Nathan and Caleb, manipulating them both in order to escape the compound. Yet, was this desire her own free will? Was it her own choice? Or were they put into her by her creator, Nathan? Even if those programs eventually led her to kill Nathan, she's still acting out a complex line of cause and effects pre-programmed by someone else. Even if that someone else didn't necessarily see that outcome. If we don't have free will, if everything is determined, who is it determined by? Who holds responsibility, for instance? For if we don't actually choose anything, then we don't have control over our own actions, and therefore it's not our fault when something bad happens.
That would appear to be the result of some decisions, wouldn't it? About where you placed your allegiance, about who you would betray. But if we live in a deterministic universe, then those decisions can only have been the result of something prior. Where you were born, how you were brought up, the physical construction of your particular brain.
Yet this feels wrong. In DEVS, we learn that Forrest, the CEO of Amaya, the company that created DEVS, he feels guilt for believing he killed his daughter and wife by calling them on the phone while his wife was driving, leading them to a devastating T-bone car accident. This guilt, this feeling that we are responsible for our actions, is because we as humans feel like we have free will. We feel like it's true. This idea is agent causation, that an agent, ourselves, can just decide to do something. That an idea that we create in our own heads can create its own line of causality, its own line of cause and effect, independent of all things before and all things after it. But DEVS, Forrest's own machine, disproves this. There is no choice that was not predicted by this machine, including the fact that Forrest was going to call his wife and it was going to lead to their accident. We'll come back to that in just a second, but the religious themes of both DEVS and Ex Machina underscore this inherent incompatibility. We regard God as three things: omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent, all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-present. Yet the CEOs of these companies, Nathan and Forrest, lose one ability for the sake of the other. Forrest has become a god, for he has become all-knowing. He can see and hear anything that ever happened in all of time.
You do. Don't you? You tech leaders think that you're messiahs.
And yet, he is not all-powerful. In fact, he is completely powerless, unable to change any outcome because he knows what it will be beforehand. He's just a player acting out a play that someone else wrote. For Nathan, though, in Ex Machina, he is all-powerful. He created every aspect of who Ava is, right down to her ability to have sex, and controls every aspect of her environment.
I programmed her to be heterosexual, just like you were programmed to be heterosexual.
Nobody programmed me to be straight.
You decided to be straight? Please, of course you were programmed. By nature or nurture or both.
Yet, he is not all-knowing. He is unable to see the knife she holds until she literally sticks it in his back. Creator and created, godhood and humanity are inherently an untenable relationship. Yet, is there a way out of this hopelessness? We lack free will, the ability to make choices, but is that actually true? DEVS presents us with a possible answer through quantum mechanics. As in a deterministic view, in classical mechanics, you can know something's classical state, say the position and velocity of a ball being kicked in the air. And if you know that, you can reasonably predict what that ball will do. You can determine how fast it will fall and how far it will go. And the same goes for quantum mechanics, the study of different particles, where if you know a quantum state of a particle, its wave function, you can predict what that particle will do in the future. Again, this seems to fit right in with determinism. If you know a little bit of data about something, you can basically extrapolate everything it has done and everything it will do. However, here's an interesting caveat. We've all heard of the idea of Schrodinger's cat. To incredibly oversimplify, and there'll be videos linked below in the doobly-doo that will go into this idea in much greater detail than I ever could as someone who doesn't have a full grasp of quantum mechanics, a cat is put into a box with a vial of deadly poison. The poison is set to release upon the radioactive decay of an atom. If the atom decays, the cat dies, and if the atom doesn't decay, the cat lives. And this atom has a 50-50 chance of decaying within 1 minute, upon which we will open up the box to see if the cat lived or if the cat died. However, one interpretation of quantum mechanics tells us that, again, way oversimplifying here, that until observed, that atom will be both in a state of decayed and not decayed. But once it's observed, it will decohere into one or the other, either state. In one version, it will kill the cat, and the other version, it will let it live. Yet, according to quantum mechanics, both of these outcomes actually did occur, but just in separate worlds. In one world, the particle decayed, killing the cat. But in the other, the particle didn't, and the cat lived. Thus, two different universes were created here. And these splitting worlds are happening all the time, not just with this Schrodinger's cat, but with all quantum entangled particles. Every time a particle could have been this thing or that thing, the universe splits, creating different versions of ourselves and different worlds in which we inhabit. Now, this doesn't mean, like a lot of people interpret this to mean, that every single possibility in every single world things can exist. It just means that in every possibility that could have happened through quantum mechanics, those worlds have split. It does not mean that every possibility exists in multiple worlds, just that everything that was possible exists in multiple worlds. Now, this goes all the way back to the beginning of time, so crazy stuff could have happened in these branching universes, but it does not mean that everything could have possibly happened. There is a finite number, just a radically, almost infinitely large one, but a finite one. In DEVS, this idea is introduced into Forrest's machine by a young programmer named Lyndon. He allows the machine to be able to better predict the past and the future by letting it see multiple worlds.
I switched out to Boybone for the Everett interpretation.
Many worlds.
Still deterministic.
Deterministic because everything that can happen will happen.
And that's as deterministic as you can get.
And perhaps when you look through the machine, it will be a world where Jesus has 2 extra hairs on his head. Or perhaps it's a world where Jesus didn't exist at all. And if this is true, then there are different worlds where different choices were made. Again, this doesn't mean every choice was made, but different ones do exist because of how different particles interact with things, again, changing the lines of cause and effect. But again, this idea leaves us in an untenable position. If the world is deterministic, we could only do what we could have done. We had no choice in the matter. But if there are other worlds where different outcomes occurred, then why do we live in this world with the choices that we feel that we made rather than another one? Do choices exist because we were able to make other choices in other universes? Or does no free will exist because everything is determined? DEVS brilliantly portrays this idea in several sequences, notably the one where we see Forrest's family's car crash. Forrest lives daily with the guilt that he killed his family, but he also feels like the world is deterministic. He couldn't have done any differently. It's not his fault, even though he feels the guilt. But if the machine lets you see multiple worlds where his family survived or didn't even get into a car crash at all, does this mean that Forrest is actually responsible for his family's death? Did he kill them by talking to them on the phone? Is he responsible or not? He doesn't know. This is why Forrest reacts with anger when Lyndon introduces this idea into his machine.
It's a waste of time. And it's dangerous.
Why is it dangerous?
Because it's seductive. As I can see from all your faces, lit up, hearing Jesus talk, getting nerd hard-ons. But let's all just be clear, it's not actually Jesus talking, is it?
No, it is Jesus talking.
But not our Jesus from our history. It's a Jesus from a history.
But the difference might be a single hair on Jesus' head.
No. It will be that difference, and 3 hairs difference, and 4, and 1,000. And all points in between and either side.
That's your response to what I've just achieved?
No, Lyndon. This is my response. You're fired.
Because he knows that introducing that concept might mean that he is responsible for his own family's death, confirming his suspicion that he is guilty. But this also confronts us with another question. Are we even responsible for the choices made in other worlds? As always, Garland offers no direct answers, just presents us with the implications and inherent contradictions of the worlds and science around us. And that idea of just presenting something is called observation, and observation plays a strong role in both Ex Machina and DEVS. As I said before, gods are supposed to be omnipresent, and so too are the creators of DEVS and Caleb in Ex Machina. Forrest in DEVS is able to use his machine to see all elements of the world. You can even watch famous people having sex. In Ex Machina, though, Caleb watches Ava from a screen in his room. Yet, for both Caleb and Forrest, both these types of observations are limited. Like in Schrodinger's cat, where observation leads to the decoherence of a universe into one element or another, Forrest and Caleb can't see all possibilities. They can only see the possibilities that exist in front of them. They can't see this other world. We are cut off from it. We are just stuck with the choices that we made. In Ex Machina, as Caleb observes Ava, he learns something that he watched on a screen. Nathan tearing up a piece of paper in seeming anger and abuse of Ava. But this actually was a clever manipulation by both Nathan and Ava to manipulate Caleb. Nathan and Ava both used the knowledge that Caleb was watching to make Caleb believe that that moment was done in malice, and both of them used it to their ultimate advantage.
Is it strange to have made something that hates you?
You were right about the magician's hot assistant.
What are you talking about?
Misdirection.
Caleb's observation was limited, and yet it changed his actions. Watching something, like in Schrodinger's cat, causes things to decohere into one possibility or another. If Caleb hadn't observed, he wouldn't have seen this happen.
Everything we do is predicated on the idea that we live in a physical universe, not a magical universe.
Are you doubting that?
Not the physical universe. But I am scared we might be magicians.
In DEVS, Forrest learns of his own oncoming death, yet he's unable to stop it, and yet he knows all the same that it's on the horizon, but he still has to play out this play. For him, the act of observing, typically an act of power, gets turned back against the observer, making him powerless. Now, I know I've talked about a lot of really complicated ideas in this video, and there is so much more to Garland's work that I haven't even touched upon. There's even more ideas of quantum mechanics with the idea of quantum immortality shown through the character of Lyndon, or allusions to Greek mythology like with the character of Stuart mirroring the ferryman of the underworld Charon in the final 2 episodes of DEVS. And that's just to name 2 examples that I'm coming up with off the top of my head. But I want to leave this video with one final thought, one that connects DEVS and Ex Machina to Garland's other film, Annihilation, in a very direct way. By constantly evoking the religious, through cinematography, music choice, set design, and dialogue, Garland tricks us into seeing these concepts of free will, determinism, and choice with a sense of the supernatural. That these are concepts beyond our natural world, otherworldly, controlled by something higher than us. These are the desires that characters like Nathan and Forrest chase, seeking to become gods.
This is forgiveness. This is absolution. You made no decision to betray me. You could only have done what you did.
Master. Betrayest thou the Son of Man with a kiss?
And yet realizing that in their search for godhood, they have actually made themselves even smaller and less powerful than when their quest began.
Forrest, you know the thing about messiahs, don't you? They're false prophets.
Yet this idea of everything being supernatural, of being otherworldly, is actually misdirection. Because Garland also subtly shows us the truth behind the curtain. That maybe there isn't a god, a creator behind the mechanism hidden in the fabric of our world. Perhaps the god behind the machine is simply just the natural world around us. In all of his work, technology springs from nature. Both Nathan's compound in Ex Machina and the DEVS building lie deep in a forest. Even Forrest's name evokes that. The first moment we see Ava in Ex Machina, she stands in front of a tree, appearing almost as natural as the roots in the ground. In the film Annihilation, a meteor crash lands on Earth and begins to manipulate the surrounding environment around it. Several women investigators are sent in and are changed. This meteor changes DNA, making these women something that is not entirely human anymore. They become something different, something new. Yet each of their evolutions seem to evoke an element of who they were before. A woman with cancer, for example, evolves into a recreation of the Big Bang, taking decay and making something rebirth. A woman who dealt with self-harm and suicide finds life coming out of the cuts that she made in her body. Surely, the world behind this shimmer feels strange and otherworldly. Yet when at the end of the film a character states,
So it was alien.
that line feels limiting, almost wrong. Certainly the meteor was extraterrestrial, but the film itself was not about aliens. It was very much about humanity, and how nature changes us, how we all grow, evolve, and change over time, regardless of how much we want to try and stay static. You see, because Garland's work doesn't make this all about this otherworldly supernatural force, but grounds everything in humanity, in tangible things that we can see and do. And he mainly talks about these things through many ideas of class, gender, and race. See, we talk about the idea of free will, and in Ex Machina, Nathan designs Ava as a woman. He could have designed the AI as anything that he wanted to, but he designed her specifically as a woman. And it is interesting that in the tech world, and in really any world, women are often the ones that are least able to have their own choice, their own agency in their actions. They're less likely to be hired, less likely to be listened to in businesses and boardrooms, and they're less likely to be paid the same. So this idea of free will gets wrapped up in gender. But again, Garland doesn't present any answers to it. We also learn in that movie that Nathan's housekeeper, an Asian woman, is also an AI, and that he uses her for sex. He treats her even worse than Ava, as disposable. He doesn't even give her the ability to talk. A lot of Asian women are used in sex trade and sex trafficking. He could have designed her any way that he wanted to, and yet he chose an Asian woman. And it goes to this idea that people of color even have less free will than anyone else. But perhaps the biggest theme that Garland touches upon are ideas of class. Both Forrest and Nathan are CEOs of their own company, misusing technology, manipulating people for their own purposes, using big data, learning every piece of information about as many people as they can for their own ends.
Every cell phone, just about, has a microphone, camera, and a means to transmit data. So I turned on every microphone and camera across the entire fucking planet, and I redirected the data through Blue Book. Boom. Limitless resource of vocal and facial interaction.
You hacked the world's cell phones?
Yeah, and all the manufacturers knew I was doing it too. But they couldn't accuse me without admitting they were doing it themselves.
Taking away choice from people to opt into these surveillance methods, and also choice away from people on the back end. It's even done in small, subtle ways, like for example, when Nathan forces Caleb to sign an NDA, determining what Caleb can or cannot say.
The signee agrees to regular data audit with unlimited access to confirm that no disclosure of information has taken place in public or private forums using any means of communication, including, but not limited to, that which is disclosed orally
It's standard.
It doesn't feel very standard.
So Garland goes to show that people with the most power, men, white, upper class, they're the ones that have the most agency and free will. But Garland doesn't just stop it there. He shows that everyone, from the top all the way down to the bottom, doesn't necessarily have everything in control.
It's funny. You know, no matter how rich you get, shit goes wrong. You can't insulate yourself from it.
Both Forrest and Nathan die because of the things that they have built, things that were out of their control. In the same way, DEVS and Ex Machina, or should I say Deus and Ex Machina, are not about gods or machines. They're about us. They're about our wish to control things, our desire to create something new, our fear of the unknown. Whether it comes out of gender, class issues, artificial intelligence, race, technology, or quantum mechanics, all of it ultimately feels natural as a tree growing in the ground. It didn't choose to grow, and yet here it stands. And perhaps that alone is what we should stand in awe of. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I wanted to do this video because I absolutely adore DEVS and I absolutely adore all of Alex Garland's work. I highly recommend that all of you check out DEVS, Ex Machina, and Annihilation. They are fan-freaking-tastic films and some of the smartest science fiction out there today. Like I said, I cannot recommend it highly enough, and I have so much more that I want to say about Alex Garland's work. There's so much I couldn't even fit into this video, like I even mentioned earlier. I absolutely adore his films, and I would just love to start a conversation with all of you about it down in the comments. So, are there things that I didn't touch upon that you love about Alex Garland's work? Are you now going to watch his work? If you watch his work because of this video, I would love to know that too in the comments. Please let me know. Also, don't forget to subscribe, give a thumbs up, and like I said earlier, comment on this video. It really helps me out in the algorithm. It really helps boost these things, and share it out if you can. Also, something that is incredibly meaningful to me, if you want to help make this channel even better and also help me right now, I currently lost my full-time job, so I have, less control over my own free will and agency at the moment. So if you want to help me in that and help me deal with the loss of my full-time job, it would mean a lot to me if you go over to my Patreon and give a little bit there. Every tiny bit helps on Patreon, and you get yourself your own cool perks, like your name in the video or access to like videos early and things like that. But regardless of if you comment, subscribe, or give to my Patreon, I'm just glad that you stopped by, and I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper. Thank you so much to all of my patrons, especially right now considering everything that's going on in the world. You keep me motivated, and you help me continue doing this channel every single month. I could not do it without you. And a special thanks to my patrons, Polymena, Mystic the Monarchete, Bree Beecher, Din Hagney, Dante St. James, Anti-Cat808, Patrick Shannon, Wayne Twitchell, Wen Dizzle Bizzle, Subraxis, Zach Cody, Maeve, Jason Knott, Maggie Evans, Christy Marie Johnson, Gavin Robinson, William Stewart, Michael Beam, Miranda Janelle, Mari Neckar, Lorena Mesa, Wellington Marcus, Susan Banks, Buttoneer, Ish the Mad, Ashley Allen Bociccio, Boyd and Mary Beth Earl, Stefan Schuhart, Greg Gillum, Christina Dalliance, Ashlyn Solstice, and Eli Bergmoss. Thank you to all of you.